Okay, guys, welcome back to another episode of Rotten Reviews. On this episode, I take a look at the 2011 movie Priest, starring Paul Bettany, Maggie Q, Carl Urban, and Christopher Plummer, and some forgettable others that I won't mention, not directly at least. It has a 15% on the tomato meter and a 46% on the audience score. Certainly it's rotten. I'll agree that it's just slightly into rotten territory for me. I would say that I feel even a 59% on the audience score would be fair, but just not quite good enough to rise out of the rotten category. I enjoyed this the first time I watched it. I watched it when it came out on DVD, or it might have been Blu-ray, I don't recall. In any case, I found it just a rather enjoyable time waster the first time through. However, I knew a lot of people at the time, my age and older, who, well, let's just say they didn't enjoy it at all. They chose to make fun of it, and they didn't like it. I just liked it, as a kind of comic book type action time filler. Now, it is from a Korean comic book story. Apparently, it's very popular overseas. I hadn't heard of it before this movie came out, so I wasn't even aware of that. The movie features a big intro scene, like a backstory, animated first few minutes that get the audience up to speed on the world building. You're in a post-apocalyptic world of sorts, like an alternate type of Earth, and humans and vampires have been battling each other over the ages. At some point they had some kind of apocalyptic final battle, and the humans drove the vampires into near extinction, and the vampires now reside only on reservations out in the wastelands, and the rest of humanity is kind of living inside what almost appears to be mega cities out of something like Judge Dredd. It's very reminiscent to me of Judge Dredd in that way. Inside the mega cities, the people are living in a high-tech kind of cyberpunk world, but it is controlled by the Catholic Church, or some kind of alternate reality version of the Vatican. The Catholic Church controls, in fact, I'm not even sure if it's the Catholic Church specifically. It's some kind of weird alternate version of the Catholic Church, and Christopher Plummer plays the leader of this church-like government. They are living in these mega cities, and it's all cyberpunk in the mega cities, except it's very depressing, and the people almost seem to be inside of some totalitarian government. And in fact, the way the movie shows it, the wasteland, the small towns out in the wastelands, they appear to actually be more desirable to live in my point of view, from what's shown inside the mega cities. Now, the movie doesn't paint it that way. The movie actually shows people desiring to live in the megacity, but the average American would probably not find that appealing. It's not a very nice place to live. In any case, the main character, the priest, he's a member of an order of priest assassins that have been trained by the church to kill vampires. However, they don't have a purpose anymore because the vampires have been defeated and live in reservations. So they're kind of left without a purpose, and they're almost undesirable aspects of society. They kind of stay in the shadows, and the public at large doesn't like these priests that have no purpose in their world anymore. Of course, there's an excuse to bring the priest back, to have the priests go on a mission. There's a story in which the vampires have suddenly started killing people again. They've taken over a reservation, and this lone priest, he's not liked even by the hierarchy of the church, but he is told that he cannot go out looking to kill these vampires. The church doesn't want to. The church doesn't want to acknowledge that vampires are still a threat. They claim that they've all been wiped out and they're all just on the reservations. This priest character, played by Paul Bettany, he doesn't go along with that. He actually escapes from the megacity and goes on an unauthorized mission to kill the vampires. It's kind of really comic booky in that way. Don't put a lot of thought into the plot logic, just kind of go along with it and enjoy the ride. Now I'm going to get into the audience reviews on this and see how well this is aged over the last 8+ plus years. And so we can start with the most recent review coming from December 1st, 2019, which would put it about 2.5 weeks ago. 3.5 stars. This is not a bad movie. An excellent cast gives it a bit of a lift. I like all the main characters, and given the plot, they did a 3.5 star job. 3.5 stars, no. I'll say this is a solid 2 stars because it is enjoyable. It can't rise to 3 stars because it's got too many flaws that I'll get into for me. However, 2 stars is fair. That's what I give this. And I'll say that I don't remember if I saw this before I saw the movie Legion. I might have seen Legion first. I don't recall. In any case, I did a rotten review on Legion, and this movie is directly related to it because not only does it star Paul Bettany, but it is also directed by the same director. There's a lot of the same production staff, so it can be said that this movie was made by the same people that made Legion. And Legion's a really, really bad movie, and in comparison, this movie is pretty damn good. This movie you should choose definitely to watch, and I recommend you not watch Legion. Don't waste your time. But in any case, for some reason, whoever financed this movie gave these people another chance. I'm surprised because Legion was so bad. But in any case, they kind of redeemed themselves a little bit with Priest. There's a much higher budget, and it shows. There's more care put into not only the casting but also the backstory, the CGI, the weaponry that the priests use. Yes, it's very cliched and we've seen it before, but they put a lot of effort into it and it shows. You can tell this is not a low budget movie by any means. Legion was. Let's continue. October 14th, 2019, 2 stars. Priest has a good visual style, decent performances, an entertaining villain in the form of Black Hat, and an amazing opening animated prelude. Too bad the rest of the movie couldn't have been like that animated prologue. While there are some stylish action sequences, they come off as few and far between, and at 81 minutes, not including credits, that's not good. And if you've seen virtually any other stylish vampire-slaying action movies such as the Blade trilogy, then you're not going to find probably anything new here. I'll largely agree with that. I certainly agree on the 2 stars. This is reminiscent of a lot of different things. You can't quite call it a rip off of Blade, but there is that aesthetic here as well. This is like a big mashup of different genres. You have some anime genre, American Western genre, cowboy Western genre. You have post-apocalyptic. You have a little bit of steampunk, quite a lot of cyberpunk. It's all mashed together, and it's done in a kind of weird style in which if I were hard-pressed to categorize this as any one of those genres, I wouldn't be able to. I would consider this just kind of a weird comic book genre, something unique on its own. It's a little bit too unique to call it a ripoff of Blade, but it has some aesthetics from Blade. The priests are more like priest characters in the line of Blade. It's almost like Blade trained the priests, but however, they're still actual priests, and they wear slightly priest-like clothes combined with Blade-type outfits, and they kill with, automatic weapons as well as bladed weapons. It's very stylish, but it's very cliched. The action scenes in which they're killing the vampires, we've all seen this type of stuff before. It's got a lot of slow motion type sequences in the action, which even in 2011 was getting a little bit old, but certainly today in 2019 would be considered very cliche. But it's watchable. At least it was very watchable back in 2011. It hasn't aged that well, but it's still watchable. 2 stars. 5 stars, one of the best movies of this type of genre. A lot of action and great acting with a very solid plot that the director pulled together to make it a good follow story for a cyberpunk style of movie. Yeah, there's a little bit of cyberpunk. It's not completely cyberpunk. Certainly the mega city part of it is cyberpunk, a very depressing type of cyberpunk setting. Almost a little bit Blade Runner meets, Judge Dredd. Very much like that. Very depressing too. There's no reason why you'd want to live in this kind of cyberpunk environment. You would much rather take your chances with the wastelands. I would. I like the sun. I like the sunlight for one thing. It's very dark in that mega city atmosphere, very depressing. 1.5 stars. The only thing that was good in this movie is the whole idea of the church is the state, and to disobey the church is to disobey God. It was a glimpse into totalitarianism in its purest form. The rest is pure garbage. I'll disagree on that. There was the opportunity to make this into some kind of authoritarian church state type thing, to make statements along that, but there was no, that wasn't actually the theme of this. That's part of the setting, but it's definitely not a statement that the movie's making. This goes right into the comic book vampire slaying. It glosses over completely anything about, you know, totalitarianism. Christopher Plummer plays this Pope-like character that's very much a tyrant. You wouldn't want to live under him, trust me, even if you were religious. But this is not trying to make a statement on religion or totalitarian religious states or anything like that. Not at all. It's just like part of the background, and this is basically an all-out just comic book type vampire slaying thing. And there's no message to be found here. There's no preaching. There are priests, right? But there are no preachers preaching to you. There's no message. You're not going to walk away with this thinking that you've been given some kind of message, good or bad. There really isn't one. That's a disappointing part of the film. If it had had some kind of slight message to the ending of this, it might have been more effective. But no, this movie ends like it's trying to create a series of movies. It ends without resolving the main problem of the vampires. It ends without resolving the main question that is set up. It simply ends as though it's leaving you for a follow-up movie to further explain things, and there is no follow-up movie. It wasn't popular enough for that. If you want the answer to where the story goes, then probably you'll need to look at that Korean animated series, or the Korean comic book or graphic novel, whatever you would want to classify it as, because there's no answer here. And I don't know if this follows the Korean graphic novel or not. Maybe it does, but if it does, this movie ends before it actually answers too much of anything. It spends a lot of time setting up the conflict and showing you the priest characters going on this mission, but there's not enough running time in this to actually solve the question of, well, how are the vampires going to be dealt with, and are there more of them out there? We don't have any of these questions that you might want to be asking at the end of this. None of these are asked. It's all left up like there's going to be a part 2. There wasn't a part 2. I don't think there ever will be. So it kind of just leaves you hanging, and that's another reason that you might find this disappointing. But as far as church and state preaching or some message there, there's nothing to be found there. The movie's not trying to do that. 2.5 stars. I felt like Paul Bettany and the director did as much as they could with a horrible script. Some scenes are good, but don't go in with too high expectations. Yeah, the script isn't so great because it doesn't really answer. I mean, it gives us backstory, but it doesn't explain exactly, you know, the finer details on how this is all plausible or where it's going to go. For example, the vampires in this movie, they're not your classic type of vampire. They are more like a Resident Evil type of mutated creature that doesn't even resemble a vampire. It actually resembles something out of the Resident Evil movies. It's not explained why that is, and we do get the character played by Karl Urban, who's just called Black Hat, and he is a former priest or vampire hunter that was somehow converted into a vampire by the Vampire Queen, which is also an alien-type looking vampire in a hive. Now, he's the only actual vampire-like thing that would be considered what we know of as vampires. They're humans with fangs and powers and etc. Karl Urban's Black Hat has all of that, dressed up like a cowboy. He's the only one, and in fact in this movie world he is the first of his kind, so there are no actual classical vampires in this. Karl Urban's character is actually the first and only one of his kind in this you know, adaptation from the Korean comic book. So don't expect some kind of straight up vampire movie. It's not like that. It's almost more like a Resident Evil type thing. The vampires are living on reservations, and This script is kind of bad, explaining why these reservations are set up the way they are. They kind of look cool, but they don't have practical purpose. It's not explained why they're located where they are, or how they function, or who runs them. It's very much hand waved away and very surface level, and that's a problem with the script. And there's a lot of dialogue problems with the script. They're attempting to do one-liners at the end of all the action scenes, but they're not funny and they're not that memorable, but you can tell they're setting everything up to have each scene end with sort of a one-liner before it moves to the next scene. It doesn't really work. It's not offensively bad, but it just falls flat, and you can see the effort and that it doesn't work. And that's again why I wouldn't give this more than 2 stars. If those one-liners worked and I laughed, or it added something to it, the dialogue was better, then I might have moved this up to 3 stars because it was enjoyable. But no, it's only up to the 2-star level. But let's continue on. Somebody else feels like this is a 5-star movie from July 2nd of 2019, so I'll read it and wonder why. I'll never understand haters. Scott Stewart directing did a remarkable job. The action, the sets, the CGI, the actors, the storyline were all on point. This film is light years above most vampire movies. It will probably take some time before it comes onto its own, like most great movies that are ostracized before the masses get it. I disagree completely. There's nothing in here that rises to the level of a 5-star movie. You know, the best part of this, the most high quality, impressive part that I wasn't expecting when I started this, was the actual anime introduction with the backstory, the world building. That was pretty damn good, and it was pretty impressive. I wasn't expecting it. It did a good job. It was very stylistic, but the rest of the movie doesn't quite reach that level of uniqueness. It's very much just a genre mashup that doesn't quite hit on all cylinders, if you want to make that comparison. So no way this is 5 stars. They're seeing something totally different, or they watched just the opening anime sequence and didn't watch the rest of it. That could be. Another 5-star from May 19th. I actually loved it and wish there was a second. Well, if there had been a second, it would have been better, sure, because it would have been an opportunity to make it even better, to continue the story, to answer the questions this one didn't, and do it with a higher budget. But no, I don't think you'll ever see that. We're 8 years on from this movie being new. You're never going to see it. Another 5-star review from April 28th. I watched this on Sci-Fi, and for a vampire movie, it was everything I expected. I was entertained, and that's what a movie is supposed to do. People judge certain movies a little too harshly. This movie did what it came to do. I disagree. This is not a vampire movie. Yes, it is, right? It is technically a movie about vampires, but it is not your normal vampire movie, in that if you just knew nothing about this and you saw this on Sci-Fi Channel on the guide listing and it said that it was a vampire movie about priests fighting vampires, and then you watched this, no, it didn't deliver that description. This is more like a Resident Evil post-apocalyptic Western cyberpunk. It is not just a straight-up vampire movie, and calling it a vampire movie is very deceptive because there are no textbook or culturally normal vampires in this at all. Even the vampires in the movie Twilight were closer to being textbook vampires than anything in this film. Yes, Karl Urban kind of looks like one, but he's actually not. He's just like kind of a creation of mutants, if you will. The vampires are very much like mutants out of Resident Evil, so let's not just say this is a vampire film. 5 stars again, March 6th of 2019. Great movie, action-packed, really enjoyed it. Well, that's like your opinion, man, because this is more like a 2-star movie. 5 stars again, love this movie, shame it wasn't longer. Well, let's check the running time here. What is the running time? We have 83 minutes, so 83 minutes, okay. That's a respectable, it's not too long. It's about the right length for an action movie like this. So I'll say, yeah, it could have been longer, but be very careful. If it had been longer and given us more drawn out bad dialogue, it would have been just a worse movie. So yeah, you could have made it better by increasing the running time, but it would have had to have been very selectively increased in that running time. I have the feeling that the director would have just put more bad dialogue into it. 1.5 stars, November 5th, 2018. Parts of this film looked very well done. This, however, is a letdown by a poor storyline and even worse acting. Yeah, I kind of made a little list here. You know, I mentioned that the vampires were very much like mutants from Resident Evil. I enjoyed it on the first watch. You know, there were a lot of themes, and like I said, they don't always work together. Like there's a little too many different themes thrown together in this, so it kind of feels like that, where you don't get an overall effective atmosphere out of it, because at one part it's kind of cyberpunk and dark and depressing, and then we're thrown out into the wastelands. It's very bright, feels very much like the desert of Southern California where it was filmed. It clashes in a lot of ways like that. I guess it could have worked, but it just, like, the brights and the darks clash a lot, and it's like a genre mashup. It doesn't feel to me like, you know, a masterpiece of mixing genres. It feels like somebody like clashed them together and they didn't quite fit well. Yeah, Karl Urban's performance, he's kind of like good in one way and then bad in a lot of other ways. It almost looks like he has plastic vampire teeth in his mouth, and he kind of speaks like he does at times. At other times, he's very effective as a villain. But then there's too much where his dialogue is really boring and pointless, and it kind of meanders off of the topic. At one point, he's asking somebody what if they like some kind of particular chicken meal for dinner. It has nothing to do with anything else going on. It's very strange, you know. It's really hit and miss with Karl Urban, and sometimes it's almost laugh out loud funny what Karl Urban says, but it's not quite there. And then at other times, like I said, it's like he seems very effective all of a sudden. But it just doesn't work. You're just pulled out of it too much, and it's like all of the other actors, they do passable jobs, but at other times their dialogue, what they're working with in the dialogue, it just feels like it was the wrong word choice, and you're pulled out of it. You're not believing all of it, because it just feels like in some of the dialogue, it's not completely stupid dialogue, but the word choices were wrong. You know, they needed a better writer. They just wrote it a little bit off. That's the best way I can kind of describe it. But definitely the action scenes are good. They're cliched, but they're good. They're not low budget. There are some mistakes, like, for example, there's a big train fight scene out in the desert, and it's nice to look at, but, you know, there's a really jarring mistake in it in which, you know, Black Hat, played by Karl Urban, and the main Paul Bettany's priest character, they're on top of the train, and at one point Black Cat kind of drop kicks. He kicks Paul Bettany away from him, and Paul Bettany kind of flies over the top of the train car and then slams against a vent, you know, like a vent that would be sticking through the top of the train car, some kind of air vent. And then, okay, fine, and then the fight carries on, and then the whole rest of the movie where we see that train, that air vent has just disappeared, and it's like the air vent was only there, and it was quite a large air vent. I'm not talking about a little pipe coming out of your bathroom ceiling. I'm talking about, you know, a large, almost like a kitchen hood-sized air vent. It's there, and then all of a sudden it's just not there after Paul Bettany kind of steps away from it. And it's very weird. It pulls you out of the whole scene for quite a while because it's such a large and obvious mistake. It's not like a little nitpick mistake. It's very jarring how it just vanishes, and there's no evidence that this vent was ever in any of the train cars again. It's a mistake like that, and there's another mistake like that where Paul Bettany and one of his other priest sidekicks, so to speak, they're climbing up the outside of a vampire hive, which is like almost like a giant anthill out in the desert. That's the way it looks. And when they climb up the side of it, it's kind of really off-putting. They're not quite grabbing anything as they're climbing the side of it. They're just kind of putting their hands and feet in the motions like they're grabbing onto ledges and stuff, but their bodies continue to rise up the side of it, and it's just really bad, like green screen effect of them climbing, and that's off-putting too. And then the piece de resistance, if you will, the main flaw, the number one almost video game-like flaw in this movie, Maggie Q's priestess character, that's what she's called, priestess, and Paul Bettany's priest character, they're fighting this vampire guardian inside the vampire lair, this giant anthill of a vampire lair or hive. Okay, fine, but At one point, Maggie Q's character, Priestess, she picks up a couple of large rocks in her hands, like big chunks of rock, and she hurls them into the air. And then, in a slow motion effect, she hurls them into the air one after the other. And then Paul Bettany turns around, gets a running start, and runs and jumps off each rock as a stepping stone in the air, from one rock to the other as they're flying through the air, in a video very much like a video game action sequence done in slow motion, to deliver this blow from above to get way up in the air. And it's very bizarre because it breaks the laws of physics completely, and this only works in the context of like a Castlevania video game or something. It's total video game mechanics. And even seeing this on the big screen with your popcorn in front of your face, this is just too jarring. It's too ridiculous. Everything else in the movie features pretty much real-world physics, and yet when you see the priest leaping across rocks that are flying in the air as though they're platforms in a video game, wow, I don't even know what to say about that. Physics-wise, you're inside a video game, and then the rest of the movie, it's just like real-world physics again. I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking. That's why some people say this movie feels very much like a video game. It is very much like a video game, the fight scenes and stuff, because they're cliched. And this movie features motorcycles very much out in the desert. The priests ride out of the city on these customized, fat-tired motorcycles that can reach, I don't know, 300 kilometers per hour out on the desert. And yeah, it's cool. It looks cool. It's all done for visual style, but a lot of it doesn't make sense when you think about this beyond the surface level. So it's very much like a video game. And that scene inside that hive where he jumped across those flying rocks is straight up like out of video game physics, a platform video game of some kind. Let's move on. 5 stars, a big 5 stars, September 25th, 2018. Slightly different take on a vampire movie, but well done and consistent with itself. Voices not overshadowed by special effects or music, so you can actually hear the dialogue. Yeah, I don't know if the music, even if I even noticed it. Again, it's very much like video game fight sequences, so whatever music you would have in a video game while they were fighting, it's no better or worse than this. 5 stars, you're totally out to lunch. Maybe if you thought you were inside a video game. 5 stars, September 15th. If you action and destruction and blood and guts without worrying about cliches, it was great. If you get tied up on the religion, unlucky. So this person is saying in his bad English that this is great if you just want action that's rather cliched, if you don't get tied up on the religious aspects. Well, let me just say, like I have before, that there's nothing in this that's trying to put out a religious message. The priests are only priests in the most cyberpunk surface level way. There's no attempt to connect this to anything in the real world. There's no message to be found here. And believe it or not, it sounds weird for me to say that because Paul Bettany's character and the other priests that are these assassins that fight almost like characters in the Matrix, they have cross tattoos right on the fronts of their face, you know, from their forehead to all the way to the tips of their nose. There's a cross tattooed to their faces. And so you would think in a movie like that there is some kind of message it's showing, but no, there really isn't. Even with all that those cross symbols tattooed on their faces, there's no religious message to be found here. There's no attempt at one. So don't think there is. Whoever thought there was is reading way too much into this thing. This is more like a video game with just surface level religious artifacts in there. 5 stars, January 6, 2018. Great action movie. Bettany, Plummer, Maggie Q, all superb. Not really. I mean, yeah, they're all passable for action heroes, but there's nothing special here. The dialogue, you have to ignore how bad a lot of it is. 1.5 stars from October of 2017. Priest is a disappointing film. It is about a priest who disobeys church law to track down the vampires who kidnapped his niece. Paul Bettany and Maggie Q give horrible performances. The screenplay is badly written. Scott Stewart did a terrible job directing this movie. I was not impressed with this motion picture. Well, I'll agree with all that pretty much, except if you just saw Legion pretty close to seeing this, then this is like an action-packed, magnificent masterpiece of a blockbuster, because Legion is the one that you should really be afraid of having to sit through, not this one. This one's actually a masterpiece compared to that one. So for this director, he's really stepped up his game here. He should be ashamed of what he did, in my opinion, for Legion. 3.5 stars, September 27th, 2017. It's just too bad there was never a sequel. Decent acting, decent special effects, worth your time. No, it's 2 stars, worth one watch, but don't think about this too much. Really don't try to put logic into this. I'll take a look at my handy dandy list here. You know, okay, it's never explained. It's never explained why Christopher Plummer's dictator, his church controller, dictator, like, I don't know if he's a pope or what he is, but anyway, it's never explained why Christopher Church, as the head of this church, Christopher Plummer, as the head of this church, doesn't want to admit that the vampires are back, that the threat is back, why he doesn't want to allow the priests to go out and fight them, why he wants to cling all the way to the end of this movie. Christopher Plummer's character is clinging to the idea that vampires have long been defeated and there are no vampires out there posing a threat to anybody. I don't know why, because even when Paul Bettany's priest returns to him to his throne room or whatnot and throws the head of a mutated vampire in front of him, and it bounces on the floor right in front of this Christopher Plummer's character, he still won't acknowledge that there's a vampire problem out there. It's very strange, and that's one of these questions, the main question actually, that's not resolved by this movie, and it's almost like the movie's telling you at the end that this will be explained to you in the second movie, but there is no second movie. It doesn't make sense. It's a big problem in the plot, because right away we're shown that a large part of this plot just begins because Christopher Plummer doesn't want to acknowledge that the vampires have returned as a threat. Okay, but the movie doesn't give us any resolution to that, even though that's the whole thing that kicks off this plot. That's why Paul Bettany is almost killed and imprisoned in the beginning of this movie. Why? Why is that? Why is the church so afraid that vampires have returned? You never get that answer, and it's almost like they expected you to wait until part 2 or 3. Maybe it does follow along the Korean graphic novel. Maybe that's the way that goes, and it isn't revealed for a long time, but it was a fail in the context of this movie. Complete fail, and that's going to make a lot of people just call this flat out rotten. But let's move on. 5 stars, July 13th, 2017. I liked it. It was good action. The story and acting is good, and would give it around 60%. The 15 is much too low. Okay, so they're saying it's unfairly rated on Rotten Tomatoes, that this deserves much higher than the 15 on the critics. Well, I'm sorry, but no critics are going to rate anything higher on a movie like this, even if you know, all the flaws that I mentioned weren't there. No way the critics are giving this more than like 20%, because right off the bat, when you put religious symbols into this, comic book movie or not, critics are going to want to find some kind of meaning there, and if you don't supply some kind of meaning for them to dissect, they're going to pan this. They just won't accept it. You'd be better off just not having religious symbiology in here at all if you want to please the critics, because they're going to try to find stuff here. So there's no way this is going to get above 20% on the critic score. But now if you're talking about the audience meter, this could have gone to 90% if it had done everything right. But with the flaws that are just out in your face, the video game physics, the CGI that works for the most part, but then you know, it's almost like they could have seen the flaws, but they didn't fix those flaws. If they had done a better job of what they actually did, you could have had it 80-90% on the audience score. It would have been completely enjoyable, but there were just too many flaws to pull you out of it. And if the dialogue had been a lot better, the dialogue had to make a lot more sense, have more context. A lot of it didn't. Dialogue was just there, and it didn't work with what was going on. 2.5 stars, March 5th. I wanted to like it. Special effects were hit and miss, but it was missing something. Whatever it was, it kept me from enjoying it as much as I wanted to. Exactly. There were just too many flaws to like say, hey, this was a 3-star or above. It wasn't any one particular thing. It's just small flaws, and along with dialogue that just wasn't enough to be worthwhile. Dialogue opportunities that were wasted. November 20th, 2016, 3.5 stars. An atypical vampire tale wherein the vamps are not human, but animal-like creatures. Though they only come out at night, they prey on humans to the point that humans turn to the church to save them. Priests become vampire-killing experts, and much like Native Americans, move the vamps onto reservations. These are tended by humans and get overrun with the help of a captured priest. Thus, the action begins. Not bad for post-apocalyptic sci-fi horror. Well, I'll say something. There's another problem with the main premise there that keeps you from getting into it all the way, and that is it never makes an attempt, the movie never makes an attempt to explain why have the vampires been moved onto reservations. I mean, why not just, if the humans had won, if the humans already had defeated the vampires, why not just wipe them out completely? Why put them on reservations? What is redeemable about these mutated vampire creatures that they deserve to be on reservations? The movie doesn't really explain that. It's like maybe they're trying to get the point across that the mutated vampires are the ones that are the illegal ones that are out in the hives, and the ones that are kind of more like human followers are the ones on the reservations. But that doesn't make sense either, because the movie when you get to the actual reservation that's been supposedly taken over by the vampires, there's not only mutated vampires inside there, but there are human followers, like not vampires, but like vampire wannabes that are in there fighting on the side of the vampires. It doesn't make sense. They're not infected by anything. They just want to make themselves, they want to worship the vampires or something. Why are they on reservations? Like, a lot of it doesn't make sense, and the movie doesn't attempt to, even in the backstory, I mean, it gives you the backstory about what happened, but it doesn't give you enough detail as to the logic behind it, why it's like this. And you think that by watching the movie you'll get this logic, you'll get these answers, but no, the movie ends expecting you to have like a second or third movie to somehow fix these problems, or what could be plot holes or explanations that you want to have. That's why I say that this is rotten. Even if you enjoyed the action, it's rotten because there are too many problems. It just doesn't even attempt to explain to you. You just can't get all the way into this. So let's look again. We have another big 5-star review, and I don't know why. October 28th, 2016. Fine action movie, great music. Bettany and Plummer, awesome as usual. Maggie Q. Okay, yeah, but that doesn't tell me anything like great, but it's just surface level. There's nothing to be found here. There are a lot of flaws to be found here. You can enjoy this one time, but that's not 5 stars. That's 2 stars. 3 stars, June 30th, not English. 3 stars, a Western-fused post-apocalyptic thriller set in an alternate world, one ravaged by centuries of war. Yeah, you get all that from the opening anime, but the movie doesn't explore that enough. You don't get anything else from... You don't get all that from the rest of the movie. You just get it from that opening anime sequence. And the rest is just 2 stars at most. 4 stars, finally saw it and loved it. Okay. 3 stars, now the critics see Priest as a stylish but cliched action flick and savaged it as such, but I take a different approach. Although Priest is flawed and extremely derivative, the movie certainly serves up enough action to please the Screen Gems crowd. The critics might be confused, but we know what we came for, while also offering some of the freshest visual landscaping in the film world today, considering just how many generic-looking films are out there these days, and with all the sequels on the way. Well, this reviewer is saying that this is just so unique that it deserves to be 3 stars. I disagree. It deserves to be 2 stars. It certainly does have unique visuals. It's got a unique mashup of different genres, but it's just not executed well enough to be above 2 stars. Once, you can watch it once, but you're not going to watch this twice. If you do, then wow, you've got tastes that are way out of the norm. 1 star, April 22nd, 2016. Dull characters and plot, nothing else really matters. Half a star, just the worst movie I have ever seen. We're in December of 2015, 2.5 stars. In a world ravaged by centuries of war between humans and vampires, some warrior priests attempt to tip the scales in favor of humanity. Get ready for some puny humans against superhuman vampires action, shot in the best Remember the Matrix style, or not. They're kind of making a point here. It kind of pays like respects to the Matrix, except you're not in the Matrix. It's kind of a mashup of styles, Blade, Matrix, Blade Runner, some westerns, The Searchers. It kind of does a lot of stuff, but it just doesn't pull it off well enough to be worth watching more than one time. Somebody down here, 5 stars, November of 2015, saying very good, a cult classic. No, it doesn't rise up enough to be a cult classic. This is more like a forgettable movie. And you know what's funny? Apparently Rotten Tomatoes has kind of forgotten about this movie too, because as you can see from the top of this Rotten Tomatoes front page on Priest, they've got the wrong movie obviously shown. They've got the correct box cover with the Priest, and the correct tomato meter scores and description, but they've got some kind of promotional photo from a completely different movie with different characters. So yeah, that was a little confusing to me, but apparently even Rotten Tomatoes isn't really putting a lot of effort into this film. So here we have it, 46% on the audience score. I say that's fair. This I don't see this changing anytime soon, but it certainly deserves to be rotten. It doesn't deserve to go up into the 60% mark. It deserves to be rotten. So even 59% I would consider fair. It's worth watching one time, but no more. If you're needing to watch this more than one time, then I'm sorry, but you're living in a different alternate type of earth than I am. So I will see you again on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.